This audio video has been recorded in the early part of May 2018 in support of a relatively lengthy memo which we have sent to all of those floor clause reclaim clients currently with Felipe and Sandra. These are bunched into a group that commenced with claims received by Felipe in October or November and subsequently. Because, as our memo that this audio video supports sets out, there has been something of a sea change in the past 6 months, let's say. And that sea change involves several currents moving in different directions, which makes it a little complicated. And so we do want every client whose claim Felipe is handling to understand what is going on. And we do realize that my sometimes convoluted, sometimes complex memos, especially where they deal with different aspects, can come across as clear as mud. And so we hope that this audio video successfully backs up the memo and that after listening to it, everybody knows where they are. One of the topics we cover is that as a consequence of the change of strategy of the bank, we are under a significant increase in workload, because we are having to twice as many clients' claims into the courts as we ever have done in the past. So at a time where we have a severely increased workload, it is difficult to communicate individually by email or by telephone conversations, because all of the pressure on me and my time and Felipe and Sandra's time is to get these claims hooked out of the treacle that we seem to be walking through at the moment, to get them back onto track where they will simply complete their journey under due process. And so this is also an attempt to conduct the same conversation with you, I regret globally, that we might have had together had I been able to speak with you to explain where we are up to and why things have slowed down. Fortunately, there is a little good news about that to mix in with the bad news, and the slowdown has also been in order that we can take advantage of new Supreme Court ruling to increase the size of your claim, and at the same time so that we could wait for a new second Supreme Court ruling, which came out only last Friday in the first week of May, which may have, but did not, enable us to increase your claim yet again. Having reached this point between February and now, where the Supreme Court were listening to two highly relevant cases, it seemed inappropriate to put clients' claims into court, knowing that if we left it till now, we might be able to substantially increase those claims. Okay, let us now just step through the letter that you have in front of you and expand on my introduction. That memo is simply to assure you that although we have been swimming through treacle for the past few weeks, matters relating to your claim are still advancing on their way to a court hearing. Now, I discussed your claim with Felipe on the Monday past and have been doing so every couple of weeks since the turn of the new year. Let's first of all take the bank's change of strategy, in that the banks, until this year, 2018, had been responding to Felipe when he put them on notice of a claim, still are, where the claimant is a Spaniard. And sometimes they have been paying out or making offers in respect of 50% of all of the cases, Spanish or English. And then it's the other half of that we have been taking to court, where the bank has almost always lost. Since last autumn, it seems as though all of the banks, acting perhaps in concert with each other, have changed their plan and their strategy. And we have heard nothing at all from any of the banks in respect of 96% of the claims filed since November 2017. And even when we have repeated the claim notice and given them extra time, especially over the Christmas New Year period, seeking to shake an offer out of them without going to court, we have not moved forward. Their refusal to acknowledge or respond to so many claims has doubled the amount of cases that we have had to prepare for court, which includes your own. Now, preparing each case for court takes several days, and at the moment, I'm drowning under a double-sized in-tray with other influencing factors feeding in. And the court lists are growing, even in Lanzarote. And so, also unusually, even when these cases are reaching the court, the banks are not responding immediately. Usually, a defendant to any kind of a claim will respond with some sort of a defence as soon as they hear of it. But we're not seeing that either. They are playing the whole thing very late and laid back. In these claims, we rely on the bank for their version of the events to be able to finalise our position and argue what they are saying. It's not like claiming for something that you've purchased that doesn't work or wasn't delivered, where all of the information and facts that exist are known to you or us, the claimant. In this situation, it's only the bank that has all of the information, all of the emails, all of the figures, all of the payment details. And without any responses, in order to make any kind of an argument, we have to find that information another way, such as asking you to ask your local branch for a quadro, which is a table of the figures as to where each payment goes, capital or interest and what percentage interest rates, and how they see the future till the end of the mortgage. Or we ask you to try and obtain that using your online account. It all takes time and much more preparation work. And so we are, and there is no point in any kidology, drowning under the amount of increased workload. And so, as a consequence of that, even the good news that we have had and we have been waiting for is less good. Now, the good news is this, that in the new year, the Supreme Court were asked to look at 2 further cases because different courts all over Spain were handling claims in respect of mortgage abusers in different ways. So half the courts were making one decision and half the courts were making another, and this was across 3 or 4 items. And so the Supreme Court were asked to look at this and produce a definitive judgment. And that has happened twice now. We have 2 judgments, so we know exactly where we stand now. But instead of hearing those judgments, one in December and one in February, we heard one in February and one has only just come out on Friday. Now, the first of those judgments was in respect of the money that the bank has been routinely gathering back from its clients, taking from your bank account, in respect of fees and costs that they had already allowed for in their bank charges. And so clients were being asked to double pay. And this is the notary fee for the hypotheca, the mortgage deed, not, I hasten to add, notary fee for the compraventa, which is the purchase deed. Obviously, buying the house was your responsibility. But if the bank have sold you a mortgage, incorporating costs and fees and outgoings, then it was down to them to pay the notary, not you. And what they have done is to then take that money from your account. Secondly, they paid a gestoria, that's the chap in Spain who runs around doing miscellaneous paperwork for financial institutions, registering things. They took his or her fees from their clients routinely, when that was, of course, a charge they should have paid from their own funds. And finally, when the deed was registered against the property at the land registry, they again took the payment for that from you, probably, we have to prove that, but probably, and didn't pay for it themselves. Those were 3 abuses that are common to every single mortgage in Spain, and it makes sense because they can amount to a lot of money. The biggest we have seen so far is almost €5,000, though more routinely on a small mortgage, it's all down to the number of pages actually. More routinely they might be 1,500 to 2,000. That's a worthwhile sum of money for us to add to your claim, and we could only add it to the claim when we had the judgment to be able to refer to. So that has kept us marking time whilst we were waiting for the December judgment, which came along in February. And then in February, we were also supposed to be hearing about a much bigger claim, quite frankly a bit more remote, almost always of 3 or 4 or 5,000 euros per mortgage, which was to do with the mortgage tax. Now, Felipe has always said he thinks that the courts that awarded these taxes to claimants were misleading themselves, because it is a mortgage tax paid ostensibly by the person who borrows the money, albeit that that tax is paid by the bank. So there was an element of confusion. The tax has to be paid by the bank, not by the borrower, but the tax is a tax upon the action of borrow. And so the banks would pay the tax and then take the money from the clients. And so a number of abogados across Spain decided that they would claim in the same way as for the notary, etc. And on Friday we learnt that the Supreme Court had rejected those claims. And so it was only actually on this last Monday that has gone, earlier this week, that Felipe agreed with us that we could now drop the cases that are fully prepared into the court, and that is the end of it. That will place all of those cases, which you are one, into the hands of the court as and when the waiting lists allow, subject to us being able to package the cases out with the necessary evidence. And in this case, the most difficult evidence, we pretty much have had for a long time everything we needed to know about your mortgage. Otherwise, I wouldn't be inviting you to listen to this audio video unless I point out that it's simply for your information, in which case you can't take those facts as read. But what we will not have, unless you have helped us to try to obtain them, are the amounts of money that the bank took from your bank account to cover their notary costs on the mortgage deed, their estaria for running around after them, wiping their noses, and the actual filing of the deed at the property registry. So we have to find those figures in order to make the claim. If we can't find the figures, we have to ask the court to issue an order for the bank to give us the figures, and I have to tell you that that might add 6 months to the whole operation, and you may feel, and we would need to hear back from you, whether it would be worth our while adding that extra time in order that your claim gets met. However, right now we're going to spend time and effort to try to obtain that information, but it really comes from your local branch of your bank who took the money and their close inspection of your bank account. You may be able to identify it yourself from the bank account, but often the banks use a code. So they would say that money taken from your account was for code 44 purpose. And you, without knowing what code 44 is, you couldn't know. But of course, the people at the branch who serve you at the counter, they will know. And so they have been able, in some cases already, to highlight the 3 charges that were taken. And if you don't like going in and letting them know that you're trying to take money from them, you have a perfectly valid reason to know this information. So if you choose to go into your bank and ask them for these figures, you can say that your accountant is calculating the capital gain applicable upon your property. Because if you were selling your property in Spain, you'd be subject to capital gains tax. Difference between what you paid for the house and what you sold for the house, less all acceptable costs. And these 3 items are all acceptable costs. But these are costs that you are entitled to deduct from your capital gain, but you can only deduct them if you know what they are and have some evidence from the bank. And so you can go into your bank branch and say that your accountant, your fiscal, is trying to calculate your capital gain, and you need please to know these 3 costs. Now, we will give you that information, how to ask for it, in writing, so that you can plop it on the counter, give them to you, or indicate them on your bank statement. They can just print out the page of the bank statement, probably for the month or 6 weeks following your purchase of the property, and tick the 3 payments that they've taken from you, if that's how it happened. Okay, I think that wraps it up then, and hopefully it's clear. And it is what I have said in the memo, in which I then direct you to this audio video in the hope that it helps, and in the hope that you've managed to stay awake through the process of me explaining these things to you. Good day to you.